All right, so this is the classic situation in a TV series, like where this good guy that asks the tech guy to like enhance and zoom in on the bad guy because they need to catch it. Now, obviously, this is not something that will actually happen in a real life scenario because there's not such a thing. I mean, we're getting there, but there's no such a thing for the moment. However, if you work with me, I might yell at you to enhance something. And so before you leave the room asking why this weird guy loved the word enhance so much, allow me to introduce myself. I am Paolo Ricciuti. I come from Campobasso, Italy. You can find me on Blue Sky as paolo.ricciuti.me or on GitHub as Paolo Ricciuti. I'm a Svelte ambassador and a Svelte maintainer, and I work as a senior software engineer at Main Matter, which is super cool because I get to work with Svelte, but also to teach Svelte both at conference and meetups, just like this one, but also in my day-to-day job because we do what's called team augmentation, which means that we join your team, we work on your project, but in the meantime, we also teach you Svelte, we help you hire, and we even launched the Svelte subscription service. Like if you don't have a full-blown project, you can scan that QR code and basically pay a monthly fee to just like get our expertise in Slack and with a weekly meeting. But enough of that. Let's talk about why I would yell at you enhance. The reason why I would yell at you enhance is because I'm very keen on progressive enhancement. So let's see the Wikipedia definition of progressive enhancement. Progressive enhancement is a strategy in web design that puts emphasis on web content first, allowing everyone to access the basic content and functionality of a web page, whilst the user with additional browser feature or faster internet access receive the enhanced version instead. Now, I want to focus particularly on two sentences. The first one is this one. Everyone has to access the basic content. This is very important because if you render your blog page or whatever, your SaaS application, solely with JavaScript, this means that everybody that does not have access to JavaScript will see nothing of your content. And you might ask, like, yeah, but what's the point? Like, everybody has access to JavaScript nowadays. And that's not true, because first thing first, like, nobody has access to JavaScript before the bundle is downloaded, and that's a huge thing, because maybe you are in a poor country and you don't have access to fast internet, or maybe you are low on data and so you are like streaming very slow, 1 byte at a time, or maybe you are just in the metro and you are like your signal is not great, or maybe you are behind a firewall and that firewall stops every JavaScript file from loading on your page. And this means that if you don't have if you don't think about progressive enhancement, those people will not see your page ever or for a long time. The other bit is enhanced version instead. So I think I want to really stress this because something that people, I think, miss a lot about progressive enhancement is the fact that you can use your fancy JavaScript functions to do like confetti or like weird things. Like, it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. But the important bit is the sentence before. Like, the basic of the content needs to be available as soon as possible. So I'm a Svelte maintainer. So for the presentation, I'm going to use Svelte and SvelteKit to teach you something. But these things that I'm going to teach does not apply only to Svelte. Like, I'm going to use Svelte as an example, but you can apply this in whatever, whatever inferior framework you use. So who here knows about Svelte? Okay, who here use Svelte? The rest can go out. No, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. No, you can stay so that you can switch to Svelte. Svelte, it's a front-end framework, much like React, but it uses a different strategy. So instead of you needed to use set state or access.value and stuff like that, Svelte uses a compiler to turn a Svelte component, which is a language in itself, into efficient JavaScript code. So you can see that it has three main parts. It has the script part, where you can use this props rune to get information from the outside, like it's a prop. When you access some information that the renderer of this component is passing in, you can create state to create a stateful variable that will react, and everything that you declare inside the script tag will be available inside the template part, which is this. And this is what is rendering your HTML. And as you can see, like, this is the magic of the compiler, is the fact that you can just do count ++. Like, that's not a reactive, like, the reactive state is not different from a normal variable. And obviously, you can use the handle bracket to actually, like, print that variable into the template. And the very nice thing also is this last block here, because the style tag, you see that I'm not using any class because, like, I don't need, because everything is scoped to the same component. So the styles does not leak out of this component. So this button background will only apply to that specific button. Now, obviously, Svelte is the rendering framework. Nowadays, you are basically never using a rendering framework without a meta framework, and this is how you do it in Svelte today. It's called SvelteKit. It's the meta framework. It's maintained by the same person that also maintains Svelte, and you can see that you have this +page.server.ts, and this is what allows you to load data from the server to the client. And so inside, you can export. You can use file-based routing, and from this +page.server.ts, you can export a load function. You can load some data in the load function, and then you return some data from the load function. And how you get access to this data is that it gets passed as a prop in the +page.svelte file. So those are two files, one next to each other. And inside this data, you have everything that you get from that you return from the load function. So this is how you get your data from the server to the client. And how about the opposite part? Well, in Svelte, we are, like SvelteKit in general, it's very keen on progressive enhancement. And that's why the suggestion is to use a form, which is an HTML element that can already communicate with the server without using JavaScript. And you can actually use this use enhance. This is an action that will be executed whenever the form, whenever JavaScript hydrates. And this is actually exported by SvelteKit itself. And under the hood, when JavaScript is available, it will do a fetch call instead of reloading the page, because when you submit a form, the page will reload normally. And by specifying the action like this means, okay, call the change function that is exported from these actions. So this change function will be called whenever you submit this form, either with or without JavaScript. And inside here, obviously, you get access to the request, to fetch, and so you can modify your database or do an API call to your other service to update the data. And obviously, you can also access the request, so you can access form data, which is what you get from the form itself. Now, this is about to change because SvelteKit recently released a couple of very interesting updates. The first one is you can use remote functions in SvelteKit now. And this is a sort of RPC style. So you can export some function, which is either a query or a form, from mydata.remote.ts. It has to be a .remote file. And when you export this function, you can then just import this function from your Svelte component. And this is the other very cool thing that we recently added to Svelte. You can just await things within your template or within your script tag. And this will be reactive, so that like if you have some parameter, it will invoke the function again whenever the parameter changes. So you can just get the data like this. And this is the other interesting bit, is that like you can export this change form, and you can just spread the change form into a form. And this also kind of solved another problem that we have with forms, is that the fact that you don't know what a form expects. Like from the other side, you need some input, which is a string, but on the HTML side, you don't know about which input you need. And this also solved that because you can do change.field some input like this. The API is probably about to change. Now, the only reason why I'm telling you this is because like this is brand new in SvelteKit. So throughout this presentation, I'm gonna not use this new syntax because it's very experimental. So I'm gonna use the old syntax. But again, you can apply the things that I'm gonna say in exactly the same way. So let's start, before starting, I'm going to use Melt, which is a library for Svelte to create interactive components. It's a JavaScript library, and I'm going to use it in some situations. It's not really important. It's just so that you know that I'm going to use this Melt UI library to fake some interactive components. Okay, let's start with this bunch of code. It's a bunch of code, but at the end of the day, what this does is that we have a plus page.svelte that it's importing an input autocomplete, and it's using a form, so it's good. We are using a form, and then if show is in the data, we show the data and an image with an alt. Otherwise, we say no video found. So this is a simple autocomplete, and if we look at the input autocomplete, it's also very simple. It's just an input within a div, and whenever we do on input, so whenever, whoa, what happened? Whenever we do, whenever we do on input, we fetch the list of suggestions. And so we are using JavaScript here. And so we fetch from autocomplete query, and what we get back is a list of suggestions. And we then loop over each suggestion, and we show an li with a button that you can select. And when you select one of the button, it's gonna put the value of the button that you've selected within the input. It's a normal autocomplete, and we can actually see it in action here. And this is the load function on the other side. So on the server, what we are doing is that we are getting the search param search of the form. And if there's no search, we just return an empty object. If there is a search, we search within the Svelte Summit video collection that we have, and we search the Svelte Summit video with the title of search. So that's pretty easy. Now, throughout this presentation, you're going to see these two windows a lot, and it's very difficult to read, I think, because it's white on gray, but this is the JavaScript word. So these two are two iframes, and those are literally the same page. This is with JavaScript, and this is without JavaScript. So let's actually take a look at how this input autocomplete behave with JavaScript. So I can search geoff, for example, and you can see that there is this list of suggestions that shows up, and I can select one, and then I can search, and when I hit search, I get the video from Geoff about Svelte transition. Now, let's see what happens when someone is in a poor country and the bundle has not loaded yet. So I can start to search Geoff, but obviously I don't have JavaScript available, and so there's no autocomplete that pops up. And so if I try to search, no video found. Now, why this is happening? And the problem here is that on the server, I assumed that everybody will use the input autocomplete, so I can safely expect the title to be exactly the title that I was looking for. And so the fix for this is actually pretty simple. I can just change this so that object.title.includes search. And if I do this, whenever JavaScript is available, I can just use the full title, and it will still find the good one. But if I do this, and I search Geoff, and I search, I still get the same video, which is good. So with this small change, we allowed people without JavaScript to search for our form. Now, what are the lessons here? Well, first thing first, whenever possible, try to use HTML elements that can already communicate with the server. Those are form, link, input, and buttons. So a form, we already have a way to communicate with our servers. In the good old days of PHP 4, we were using forms, and that's it, forms and links. You can use query parameter or forms to communicate with the server. And the other one is that when you receive data, always assume that the people on the other side did not have JavaScript. So this is a very important lesson, because if you assume that your fancy range selector is working, or your fancy date selector is working, you're going to treat the data that you receive in a different way. So you should always try to make sure that when you receive the data, you get the data that everybody can submit. Let's see another example. This is also very easy. It's a Svelte component. It's using this form, data SvelteKit keep focus, which allow you to search something, and on input we auto-submit the form so that when you search, it will submit the form and it will filter out this list of Svelte ambassadors. So I can search for Thomas, for example, and without me needing to send the information, I'm actually filtering out the list. Now, watch what happens when I do it without JavaScript. Well, obviously, I cannot auto-submit the form, but I cannot submit the form at all. I mean, spoiler, like in this case, I technically can. I can just press enter and it will work. But that only works because there is only one input field. If you have two input fields and you don't have a button inside a form, you have no way to submit the form without JavaScript. So again, the solution here is also pretty fine. Just add a button. So in this case, when I'm using JavaScript, I get the fancy behavior of just being able to search and get the list filtered. But when I'm not using JavaScript, I can still submit the form with a button. So again, what are the lessons here? Always provide a fallback to submit without a form. That's a silly lesson, but it's something that a lot of people don't think about it. But there is a much more important lesson here is don't be afraid of changing the design if that leads to a better UX. So you need to fight for your users. You need to force your designer, because like designers will tell you like, that's ugly, it's an ugly button, I don't want it there. You need to fight for your users so that everybody has access to the same content. So let's see this other example here. So this is a fancy select, right? So we have this select, and obviously we want to style it better because the designer told us that we need to style it with this bold, and we want to have like searching capabilities and stuff like that. Now, obviously, all of this needs JavaScript in a certain way, but because select totally sucks to style. We're getting better, like there is a new way to style the select in a better way, which by the way broke iteration for every framework, but that's another story. But the point is, this needs JavaScript. So how can we progressively enhance this? Well, what we really want is something like this. So it does no JavaScript. I just want a normal select. It will not be the fancy, like with bold and with search capability select, but I really want the normal user to have a normal select. Now, obviously, you don't want the select to pop into existence. Like, you don't want the select to change. But what you can do is that you can style the select in a different way, like style the select in the same way, but with JavaScript and without JavaScript, so that the experience is seamless. Now, there are ways in Svelte, at least, to style things differently when you have JavaScript enabled or not. For example, this is one of the ways, but you have this attachment that basically runs whenever the JavaScript mount that component, hydrate that component to the DOM. And so by default, we can have this Node.js class and change the style there. But then with this attachment, which is just a function that receives the node as input, we can remove the class list, like the class from the element. And so you can see that in the two different words, those are styled differently. But what we really want in this case is not just style the select differently. We want the select to stop existing when the JavaScript loads, but still exist before JavaScript loads. And you don't want to style it different because inside a form, if you have two select with the same name, then they're gonna conflict. So what you can do is one of my proudest, like it's my little child of component. It's called the NoSSR component, and it's very easy. You basically get this snippet, which is the thing that you can pass to the component. So you can, if you want, you can pass HTML element that will be rendered within the component, and I get the fallback and I get the children. Now there is this await block in Svelte, and what this does is that on the server it will just render the fallback because you are awaiting something. And whenever we get on the client, the promise will immediately resolve and it will immediately switch to the children to the normal children. So how you use a component like this is that you can just do this. So you can wrap your melt select, which is the fancy select with a bunch of stuff, inside this noSSR component. You can pass this snippet fallback with the normal select, and they both get the same options and the same name. And so when you open this select, so from the outside is literally the same code. Like, nothing changed here. And you can see that, like, in the JavaScript and non-JavaScript world, they seems to be the same, but then, when I open this, I get the fancy select, and when I open this, I get the browser select. Now, this is obviously uglier, but at least you still have the chance to actually use the text area. Not the text area, the select. So, another example. This is a very difficult one. It's a dialogue, right? So dialogue, like, there are HTML elements, like the dialogue HTML element is very good, and invokers, which is a brand new HTML capability, are coming to the browsers, but I mean, support is still not great, so you can't really use them. So for the moment, you still need JavaScript, even a little bit of JavaScript to open the native dialogue. So, like, how to do it? Well, if you see here, we have this melt dialog. So this is how you create a trigger. So this button, it's using melt under the hood, and this button will become the trigger to open a dialog. And this is the rest of the dialog. So if you see here, we have our login button, and we can click here, and you see your login here. Now, first thing first, like, please never do this. Like, don't put stuff that is really important for your website, like a login, behind something that can only work with JavaScript. If you can, don't put your login inside a dialog at all. It's probably fine to just use a dialog for some extra information that is not really important for the user, but please don't ever do this. Because in the no JavaScript world, when the user tries to log in, it doesn't do anything. So what can we do? Because in this case, it's very difficult to progressive enhance. Well, we can use the noSSR component, and look what we are doing here. When JavaScript doesn't load, instead of using a button to trigger the dialog, we can just put a link there to a route that has the same content of the dialog. So this will basically server-side render the link, and then when JavaScript loads, it will change the link from a link to a button that looks the same, so the user will not see the difference. But this means that when JavaScript is available, you can log in here, and when JavaScript is not available, you can click here, and you can log in here. So you can style this page to look at as a dialog if you want, and obviously this is not always applicable, because maybe you are in the middle of a form and you want to open a dialog to say something different to the user, so you cannot really navigate there. But the goal of this slide is basically to say this, like, if you are losing, just change the rules. So the point is, you need to get a way to get your content to the user in a way. So nothing tells you that you cannot, by default, use a link and then change to a button to open the dialog if you really want. You need to find your way around things. So this last one is actually specifically related to SvelteKit. So, and I just wanted to include because it's something that actually caught me off. So in SvelteKit, you can use a layout, and this layout is basically to have the same layout in the same, like, these links are always the same in the same page. And let's say that you have a form to join a newsletter, right? So what this is using this use enhance function that, as I've said, it will use JavaScript to submit your form when JavaScript is available, and you will get the result back here. So what you can do is that, like, you have this /subscribe page that is reachable from every page that you have, and you're just, like, exporting this default action, and you do your subscription here, and then you return success from this action, and the result will be here, and this function will be invoked with JavaScript. So how does it look like is that when I do this, and I do, like, Paolo.Ricciuti, at mainmatter.com and I join, I get this little pop-up that say, hey, you have subscribed. Now, watch what happens when I do this without JavaScript. Obviously, this code cannot run, and if I join, I get a 500 internal error. Now, this is actually subscribing my mail to the newsletter. The reason why I'm getting an error is because when you have a form like this, when you submit the form without JavaScript, the form will actually navigate to that page, so to the /subscribe page. You will actually physically navigate there. So it will invoke the default action and then navigate there. Now, the problem with this, like this is probably the only difference between how SvelteKit treats enhanced forms and normal forms between the browser and SvelteKit. And it's the fact that SvelteKit will not navigate to the other page. And that's specifically for this very reason. Like if you want to have a global form that submits to the same thing, you don't want the user to navigate there when they join your newsletter. So what's the issue here? The problem is that we have a pluspage.server.ts, we don't have a pluspage.svelte.ts. So when SvelteKit tries to render that page, it doesn't find anything and it throws a 500 error. So the solution here is to just add a thanks for subscribing page so that when you are joining the newsletter within the non-JavaScript world, you can actually just join and you get a thanks for subscribing, which is kind of the same as an alert. So all of this to say that progressive enhancement is an art. So you don't like, I can give you like 1,000 examples of how to progressive enhance stuff, but the real thing is that progressive enhancement is an art, and you need to find your way. You need to be willing to spend time to figure out how to make something, some interaction, works even without JavaScript. So there's no pre-made solution. Experiment, mess around, stay hungry, stay foolish, find a way to get your content to the user, and most importantly, thanks for listening.
Thank you.